Milling Through History presents The Man Behind the Queen. When we see the face of Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, many people would go ahead and say, oh, that's just Queen Elizabeth's husband. They do not realize that for the life of Prince Philip, he has been a man who has found himself rather uniquely placed in history. Yes, he is quite possibly the most famous spouse ever to walk the earth, and yet he has also been rather influential in the way in which things have been done. For starters, he was born on June the 10th, 1921, and he was both a prince of Greece and Denmark, but by 1953 would lose any rights to those titles in those countries. His family was sent into exile after the monarchy of Greece was overthrown in 1922, and living in continental Europe, he would find himself dealing with a family that were effectively just royals in exile. He would be educated in Britain, and yet he would also find himself coming back into Europe during the rise of the Nazi movement, seeing firsthand exactly what was potentially going to come in the center of the 20th century. In 1939, he would meet for the very first time Princess Elizabeth, when he was asked to escort both her and her sister, Princess Margaret. She would fall in love with him on sight, and the two would begin to start exchanging letters to each other. During the Second World War, he would serve the Royal Navy in both the Atlantic and Pacific theaters, eventually reaching the rank of commander. In 1946, however, Prince Philip had decided he would ask for Elizabeth's hand in marriage from her father, King George VI. King George had requested that Philip wait for Elizabeth to turn the age of 21 before marrying her, and the couple had agreed to go ahead and postpone any marriage until that time. By the time of their marriage, though, Prince Philip had abandoned the majority of the titles he had from Greece and Denmark. He had become a British citizen and had taken the surname of Mountbatten. He would also be made the Duke of Edinburgh, Earl of Merioneth, and the Baron of Greenwich on November the 20th, 1947, only hours before he was set to wed Elizabeth. After the two had their honeymoon, they would be stationed on the British island base of Malta, and Elizabeth would be called upon to begin performing more royal duties as a princess of the court. While the couple were touring Kenya, news would reach them about the death of George VI on February 6, 1952. As a result, their trip was canceled, and Elizabeth would need to return back to England in order to assume her duties as the next monarch. For Philip, this meant that his career in the Royal Navy was thus ended. He had anticipated that perhaps another 10, 15, even 20 years in the Royal Navy would have allowed him to satiate whatever career goals he had, and then he'd be prepared to go into private life while Elizabeth would take the limelight. Instead, things had changed, and as such, so would the life of Prince Philip. One of the biggest issues which came up was that of the family name. For Philip, he was under the impression that because he had married Elizabeth, she had taken his last name. There were those who believed that now the royal house was referred to as the House of Mountbatten. When there was cries of improper changes of titles there, Philip had offered a compromise of Edinburgh, as he was the Duke of that location. And yet it was decided that from henceforth the royal family referred to as the House of Windsor. As a result of this, Philip was once heard to complain, "I am the only man in the country not allowed to give his name to his own children." The Queen would also declare that Philip was to have place, preeminence, and precedence next to her on all occasions and in all meeting, except where otherwise provided by Act of Parliament. As a consort, Philip would have to support his wife in many areas of her public life. And yet, one of the things that had dogged the couple throughout many years of their marriage was the fact that the two had grown distantly apart. And yet, both have gone ahead and repeatedly denied this, saying that their marriage has brought them closer together. It is only through scandal and speculation that these rumors of them being adrift existed, and as such, there was no real way to go ahead and conclude if it was true or false. On February 22nd, 1957, Philip was granted the title of Prince of the United Kingdom and was to be henceforth referred to as His Royal Highness, the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. As a result of his royal title, though, Philip has been called upon to do numerous duties, and he has gone ahead and fulfilled many of them. In fact, his schedule is so busy, it makes one wonder how, as patron of 800 organizations, he is able to go ahead and do this. And yet, for the better part of over 50 years, Philip was able to go ahead and maintain many obligations for the British monarchy. On August the 2nd, 2017, Philip would retire from royal duties at the age of 96, and later that year, he would celebrate his 70th year of marriage. In 2019, Philip would surrender his driver's license after getting into an accident. Recognizing that the accident was his own fault, he even visited the people that he had inadvertently injured. Now, presently, Prince Philip is the third oldest living royal in the entire tree, and as a man, he is the oldest royal ever to live. However, due to the genes of both himself and Queen Elizabeth II, Prince Charles has been seen as a potential likely rival to Prince Philip's longevity and could potentially take the title of oldest living royal from both the men and the women in the royal lineage. Now be sure to click like, share, and subscribe for future episodes of Milling Through History, and leave comments below for future episode ideas.